So I've been collecting Super Nintendo games for the best part of 10, 15 years. I don't go over the odds in terms of pricing. I won't pay too much money for something that I don't think is worth it. I think the most I've ever spent on a Super Nintendo game is about £50, not including sort of one-off collector's editions that came out. So you got your Street Fighter 2 one, and there's an Earthworm Jim as well, which I quite like. They're nice collector's items. But I'm priced out of the market nowadays with PAL. I don't have the money, I don't have the disposable income that some people do, and you know what, fair enough, if you've got that money, that's your business. So I changed up and started buying American games, which were much cheaper, and I found there's a lot of obscure ones that no one looks at, talks about, or even know exists. Things like Rocky Rodent, you never see anyone talking about that, it's not very good. We'll see to it at some point. Chester Cheetah, that's been done a few times on the internet. Quite a famous mascot for crisps, chips if you're American. We've got Cluedo the game. It's literally Cluedo the game. There's nothing more you can say to it. But then you got Rock and Roll Racing, which is a very sort of famous game. It's one of the SNES top racing games. It's up there with Mario Kart easily. But this is obviously the American version because the British one is horrendously expensive and the artwork's not as good, even though that artwork isn't particularly decent either. But not many people know that there's that one as well, RPM Racing. That's essentially the prototype to Rock and Roll Racing. So we're going to have a look at both of them today and try and compare them and just look into how bad this one really is, which paved way to see how good this one became. So you'll notice immediately if you just compare the two, RPM doesn't have music that's even a touch on Rock and Roll Racing. The whole presentation for Rock and Roll Racing, in fact, is just so much vastly improved over the space of a couple of years that they had to change everything. You've got official rock tunes like Black Sabbath and Steppenwolf, which RPM just sort of farts along. Just to compare, here's a couple of tracks. You'll notice that the menus are terrible. Look at how plain it is on RPM, and then look at Rock and Roll Racing, where every time you'll see a comparison, the presentation is just amazing. It's not only the presentation though, the gameplay is much slower on RPM, and it's been super ramped up for Rock and Roll. You can tell the difference immediately playing one and then exactly straight away playing the other one. There's such a difference in quality. There's more weapons. RPM, all you've got is like a mine that you can put down. You have to buy them as well, so you can carry up to 9, same with oil slicks, so you can stop your opponents. But the problem is, you have to buy them again. And if you look at how much you earn per race on the lower levels, I worked out that one mine, which is $50, that's 9 races on one of the lower levels just to buy one mine. Whereas Rock and Roll, you start off with one of each item, but then you can buy more. And every time you complete a lap, it refills all your items again, so you can just go out and cause carnage. The main offender on RPM though is the split screen. Even on one player, it shows a main competitor rival that you race against, but it doesn't have a character, it doesn't give you any sass. Why is it there? You can't see the turns when you come to the bottom of the screen because you're on top. You can't see which way you're going. Half the time you end up into a wall. Even some of the ramps on it are difficult. It's like, look at this one. I can't even get up this ramp because the baddies have crashed into me. I can't move. I have to go backwards. You can't reverse, by the way. You have to turn around and come all the way back again, only to try and get up a hill. And for whatever reason, you explode, you blow up, you explode again. Even if you ding a wall slightly, there's absolutely no room for error. Rock and Roll, you've got a life bar, which is much more forgiving. By the time you get to stage 10, you unlock slightly better gear. Still not good enough, and then by level 20 you can unlock the rest in the shop menu. Rock and Roll, you can afford whatever you want for your particular car, so long as you've got the money. You can buy as many items and bombs and boosts as you like. Speaking of boosts, look at this one on RPM. Just looks like your car's farted, and then look at it on Rock and Roll. It's like an explosion going off. Rock and Roll as well, not only can you buy new cars, you can also pick the colour, and it sounds like a really petty thing, but when you actually play it and want to change up a bit, RPM, you're stuck there. You've got that blue car, that's what you drive now. Well done. And just looking back at, again, I'm going to keep harking back to the presentation on Rock and Roll, because they've really, don't get me wrong, RPM, it's a test effort, but give them credit, they've really beefed it up for Rock and Roll Racing. You've got characters, you've got opponents. Let's sort of gloss over the fact that this one is definitely an alien. It's definitely a xenomorph, there's no way about that, is the copyright infringement. The joke being, if I play a lot of the Rock and Roll Racing music, I'll get a copyright infringement strike. That's irony. But it's just good racing against other sort of colourful cartoon characters. You can even unlock Olaf from The Lost Vikings. Saying that though, the one thing RPM has over Rock and Roll is you can build your own tracks. Why you'd want to, because what's the point? You're just going to play it for 2 minutes, it's going to spend you 6 hours making it. Why? There's no reason for it, but it's there. It's there for you to do if you're suicidal enough to want to try it. Or you can just buy Rock and Roll Racing instead. Much more fun game, you'd have a better time with it. It's genuinely the better product. So this is quite seldom seen on eBay, especially in the UK. But for a few pounds more, you can upgrade to the best game, the final outcome, which is this one, Rock and Roll Racing. See you soon.